Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, and I'm here with a very special guest. It's our friend from Centre Bounce, Joe. How are you, mate?
I am doing very well. Long time no see, Swizz. It felt like it's only been a few hours since I've last seen you. Thanks very much for having me on, man.
Mate, it's great. We were actually going to do this at the game, but my filtering microphone set up. I've now got a portable microphone like Benny Boy does. So we've actually headed back home to do the record of the first match sim for the season, which was Melbourne Richmond. I know a lot of people were messaging us from the game, and there was a bit of footage of us after Clary kicks a great goal that Joe just sent me, where we're on our phone straight away responding to some of the fans out there. So we always love the interaction from both our communities and all the Supercoach community. So yeah, it was great there, and we're there with our mate Dave. So it was great chatting to him, and you and I chatting throughout the game and watching some high quality footy, mate.
Yeah, it was. It definitely started off a little bit fast, not for your boys. Definitely was a Melbourne very strong start by them. But I think to your credit, obviously missing a lot of stars around the ball. We got to see obviously some other names start to try and put their hands up for selection, show what they've got under Adam Uze. And I think by having those players missing, it does we do have to take what happened today with a bit of a pinch of salt, but all we can do is just simply, I suppose, comment on what we saw, and it was quite good actually on a number of different fronts. I agree.
Yeah, and that's always the thing with these match sims because you don't have the full strength side. But throughout the season, you get injuries and you get situations where teams are like this. They might be missing 3 or 4 good players throughout the lineup, and these players have to step up in these moments. So at least we get a look at what that would look like if there were if teams were hit with injuries. So it's something to probably put in the back of the mind there. But it's also some of these players are playing for spots, and how they interact with the star players that are there is probably something that coaches are looking at, and how they not only play their role but step up when the opportunity presents. And talking about stepping up, we'll start off with the winning team, the Tigers. Well, and I say winning team because realistically, after 4 quarters, they shake hands and bring out the VFL, or I can't say the VFL players because Clayton Oliver was out there for the D's, but realistically, the standard, the drop off, and not just with the players, but then you had the umpires and even the crowd leaving. There was a massive difference. So we'll say the Tigers winning after 4 quarters. But from Richmond, what did you see there, mate?
Oh, mate, I think there was definitely a couple of real standouts, but I guess I'll talk about the one guy that I think probably was, by the end of it, probably putting their hands up for best on ground. I'd probably say it was Shai Bolton. I think the guy really absolutely looked sensational, to be honest. Obviously, he's a very highly rated player for over there for the Tigers, and he did, played a bit mostly forward. Definitely didn't play on ball as much as I would have probably liked, especially considering the names that were missing from there. That's because you had another little mid-pricer doing really well in there. But Shai Bolton, when he got his opportunities forward, mate, he nailed a couple of absolute beautiful goals in the pocket, and didn't really seem very scrappy at all. So I really liked what I saw from Shai Bolton over there out of the Tigers.
Yeah, mate, he was great. He still ended up having 13 CVAs, so he didn't, get in the middle. But what he did forward of the ball was spectacular. Should have kicked 5, kicked 3. I think he dished one off and then got caught twice trying to, maybe he should have dished those 2 off as well. But he's never been the most team-orientated player. That's for sure. Does like finishing the work, but he's so good at doing it. There's no surprise. So I've had a few people ask about him. I think you're probably getting similar to what you've got, but potentially that could be enough to be top 6 this year, just with the lack of forward options. I'd be saying different if we didn't have players gain dual position throughout the year. I'd be like, okay, yeah, this guy, you could confidently lock him in as a top 6. That's probably just a question mark, but yeah, we know how talented he is, so no surprise there. For me, I thought Richmond's best player was Jacob Hopper. It's amazing what happens when a player actually gets a pre-season in. And, I'd mentioned this a couple of times before, but talking to, in particular, Heath Shaw, high ratings from the GWS players about Hopper. Probably never saw the best of him just because he didn't have the consistency. And probably the talk was from their point of view that he was, probably better player than Taranto. Obviously, Taranto's got a lot more, tricks and probably skill about him, but Hopper is just that in-under ball player who finds the footy at will, but we've just never actually seen it just because, he just gets no continuity in his body, but has had the full preseason, no interruptions, and looked fantastic and could potentially be Richmond's leading midfielder in there this year. And I know a lot of people are talking about the different well, you couldn't even call them mid-prices. Let's just call them cheap premiums from Guthrie onwards, your Wines,
Yep.
your Nick Martins, in that sort of Matt Crouch. So he does fall into that range, and nobody's actually talking about him. So I think potentially if he didn't have the buy, he would be a lot more interest for me. But some player to just maybe watch throughout the early starts of the season, because at 440k, there's one season that I think he could potentially get it right, and if that it could be potentially this season. So I liked him. There's another
Yeah.
young Richmond midfielder who comes in at a much cheaper price, who has got the Supercoach community talking at 254k. What did you see of Thompson Dow today, mate?
Mate, Thompson Dow, like he got a lot of centre bounce attendances. He clearly, being given every opportunity to show his medal, and I thought he did. Very strong over the ball, a very, I suppose, aggressive sort of contest work, and he's not afraid to put his body on the line. That's for sure. So it was great. He would free the handball out. I definitely think that if the full side is in there, Dusty types as well, that those handballs that he's putting out into space for people to get onto would be, I suppose, hitting targets, as opposed to today, which were, some of them were a bit hit or miss. So, but ultimately, I really was buoyed by what I saw from this guy. It's a question mark over whether or not, obviously you're a Richmond man, and I asked you on the day, like, is he going to continue to get these CBAs with people coming back? And you told me that you reckon he would. So, look, if that's the case, then obviously might not to that extent. I think he was equal first for the number of centre bounces that he attended. So, but if he doesn't need that many to be a worthwhile selection, even if he got, 3/4 of what he had today, or around half of what he got today, I still think for his price, he'd make us some good bank in the midfield. So it's just a question of whether or not people feel confident having him there instead of one of those Nick Martins, Matt Crouches, Guthries. I think that's what a lot of people have at their M6 position. If they don't, and they're going with the 5 primo in the midfield, then I absolutely would be encouraging, I think, a strong look at Dow at M6.
Yeah, and it's a good question, because it depends on what you do with that extra 200-300k. If it's like getting your Fife harms up to, say, Flanders, for example, if that could be the difference there, well, then you could potentially roll the dice on Dow. Obviously, I would like to see it next match when Baker and Taranto come in. I don't think Dusty's going to play as midfield time as everybody is saying. Like, he is getting older, and I still think he'll run through the midfield when he needs to, but he is so damaging forward as well. It does give them the flexibility, and when they've got a young player like Dow, who has shown the ability they can get the ball, it's just a question of his disposal. I think they are going to try to get him opportunity. It's just trying to then balance that. Like, you've got Jack Ross, who's gone in there 23 times today. Jack Graham's another one. So there are a few midfield options. The worry then potentially comes with Dow is, I think he starts the season, but if he was to have a couple of back-to-back poor games, then what happens after that? And that's where it gets scary at that price range, just playing sort of devil's advocate. But if he was to do what he did today in the next 2 practice matches, so the Tigers are playing the Pies in a community match, and then actually they might even play another one now, because I'm thinking some of those rounds 0 bike teams might have a second, so they're just playing Richmond Collingwood. So if he does the same with some of those guys back, it'd be very interesting. But we actually do get a look at round 0 against the Gold Coast. So if Dow was there, full complement, playing an AFL match, getting a reasonable amount of CBAs, then we've got the ability to lock him in our sides for the start of round 1. So that's where I think at the moment you've got to have him high on that watch list, because it could potentially be a good, decent cash cow. The other question I probably have had was around Sam Naismith being the R3 option. And I thought he came in the game better as the game went on. I know a lot of people already online have been sort of bagging Samson Ryan's performance. I thought it was a little harsh. Yeah, he's up against Max Gawn, who's the best ruck in the competition, well, arguably with Tim English. So it's always going to be tough. And Richmond did sort of use multiple options through the ruck. So Samson Ryan, we had Naismith, Nane Curvis obviously wasn't there today. Cozzy and Bolter did the ruck work up forward as well. So I think I don't think I can trust that as an option at R3 unless Nankervis wasn't playing round one. If that was the case, then it's a different story. But I just don't see how Naismith fits in because I think they'll give Samson Ryan the opportunity, and he's more likely to be the backup to Nank because he's probably more of a forward option than Naismith. So that's where I kind of sit with that. Anyone else from the Tigers' point of view that stood out or got on that watch list for you, mate?
Mate, I can't wait for round 7 for Tyler Sonsie to be a downgrade target, that's for sure. I loved what I saw from him every time he did something good, which was pretty often. And it's like, oh, yes, Sonsie, the perfect downgrade target. Thank you so much for getting suspended, mate. It's very rare that you want to see someone get suspended, but in this circumstance, I really liked what he did up forward. Throughout the duration of the day while he was on there was great. And then someone else in the forward line who did really well, particularly early on, was Noah Bolter. The guy was on absolute fire. He gave his direct opponent an absolute bath every time the ball came near him. So, whether it be in the ruck, getting free kicks against Gawn, or whether it be at ground level, he did sensationally well. So I was really pleased with those two guys.
Yep. A couple of the other young guys. So Kane, now you probably say his name better than what I do. McAuliffe. So I only came to the 3 CBAs, was probably involved late, which was a bit disappointing. I kind of wanted to see more out of him. Steely Green did some nice things, worked his way into the game, got some touches down at half back. He's more of that forward pocket, half forward type, but did roam up the ground. So I don't mind the idea of Steely. I did talk about him earlier in the preseason. Seth Campbell did a couple of nice things as well out there. I know you were pretty impressed with a couple of the plays that he set up. And then the same with, I think it was Sam Banks, but unfortunately he's a way too expensive for us to be looking as a super coach option, but at 271 in the defense. But yeah, I thought those lesser names were definitely putting their hand up, where compared to like a Ralph Smith, who I was asked about, he was playing in the second 11 a game. Same with James Therese. I think they're a bit further back. Tom Brown did a couple nice things as well from the Tigers. There's definitely opportunities for these young guys. And it just depends, I guess, who puts their hand up against the Pies next week. And I'm sure Uze, being a new coach, will probably reward a couple of these young fellas with a start come round 0.
Yeah.
Moving on to... Yep.
And Gipkiss was good as well.
Oh, Gipkiss. How could we forget about Gipkiss?
Yeah, no, Gipkiss is, he was playing, key. And whenever someone's playing in that role and you don't notice him, it means they did a very good job. So I thought Gipkiss had a very solid outing today. Definitely didn't do anything that warranted fading him. I definitely think everyone should be getting this guy. He looked pretty good, to be honest. Didn't do anything bad, nothing flashy either at the same time. But I think he's just going to give you that 60 to 70 perhaps scoring, depending on how many intercept marks he can give you. I think he's definitely very fine as a D6 option, guys. So
I'm going to lower those expectations a little, Joe. I think maybe 50s-ish, but I still think it's a bit more expensive to put on the bench, but I think he could be the potential perfect D7 because he's going to play every week. Like Richmond have shown that it's going to be Young and Gipkiss down there. And as you said, depending on how many intercept marks. So I think some weeks it could be a 30 or 40. He's going to get a couple of games where he's going to go 100 because he's just going to, feel confident, take a couple early intercepts and get going from there. So I can definitely see him. He's going to have a spike 1 or 2 games, and it'll probably be that sort of match where we're probably leading into the buys and he hasn't done a lot, and people are like, oh, well, I'm going to just trade Gipkiss out. And I bet you the week after the buy probably freshens up and comes out and scores that 100, and everyone's like, why did we trade out Gipkiss? So that's just an early prediction there. And the last one I should have mentioned is Jaden Short, my man. could have not butchered the ball anymore if he tried in that first quarter. May have been worst on ground, which is really hard for me to say because I love Shorty. But maybe it was just staring into Gawn when he walked in to do the coin toss because he was the acting captain today. But he, definitely cleaned that up, kicked a typical Jaden Short goal in the second quarter from outside 50, and then, started taking his kick ins when Vlossen was taking them early. It was kind of playing, as you were saying, like you thought he was nearly playing midfield, how high up the ground he was getting.
Yeah.
But it kind of was like sometimes he was playing sort of lockdown, other times I would just sort of let him roam and do what he wanted from half back. So I think it's still, again, a bit of a watch. For me in particular, I still like the idea of getting him to Dacos. I know a lot of other people are just going to lock Dacos in, which is fine. And I think that Richmond Collingwood game is going to show a lot which way we potentially go with those two in particular. So I'm interested to see how that eventuates. Now, moving on to the Ds. There's some very interesting options there. I'll let you start off with both our man because we were on the Caleb Windsor wing today where we were watching the game. So I know we had some different arguments with content creators out there on Twitter because when you're watching it on TV, obviously you guys see a lot different to what we're probably doing live at the ground. As anybody who's ever been to a live game, and you probably do get a bias depending on what side you're sitting. So we were sitting front row on the half forward flank. So we probably got to see a lot more Windsor than we did a few of the other players. But yeah, tell us about Caleb, mate.
Mate, it was Caleb Wing there today. He roamed that wing to perfection. It was I really liked what I saw from the kid, and obviously he really really gained a lot of attention in the last couple of weeks when Melbourne started to show some of their footage from training, and he looked amazing. And then obviously we heard afterwards from Petrarca saying if you're playing Supercoach, get this kid in your team, and that's sort of exactly what we sort of saw today. Obviously, as you mentioned, was people on the telecast didn't quite see all of that and thought that his game wasn't entirely that hot shot. But that's probably because the camera tends to follow the ball a lot more. It doesn't really see anything around outside of that. And so we're seeing this guy running up and down the wing constantly, a lot of repeat efforts. He even tracked I forgot which player it was, all the way to the top of the goal square, trying to affect the rundown tackle there as well. So loved what I saw from him, as well as that bounce. Just without Salem there today playing off halfback, it just felt like there was no real bounce coming out of the halfback line for Melbourne. It was very slow and stagnant ball movement, very slow switching. And I was sitting there and we could see some people, a bit further down saying, run, present an option, do something. And it wasn't until Windsor was in the vicinity, received a free kick for a high fend off, kicks the ball, runs past, receives it back, a bounce, kicks it further. He moved the ball up the ground by himself. Loved what I saw from him. Definitely think he's worth that price tag at 180 odd K. And I think that he did absolutely nothing wrong today apart, to warrant a round zero selection. Yeah, he missed a few kicks here and there, but it was literally his first hit out at AFL level. So I can forgive the kid for it. He has an endeavour. And I liked him a bit more than this other mid-pricer that I think is going to be
and I'll talk about him because this is the whole issue. Because as you said, watching it live, you get to see those running patterns. So a lot of people online were talking up Jack Billings's game, and sure, he started at half forward, led up, presented well, and we probably saw more of that in the third quarter. I thought he actually was much better, but then probably because the wing we were on, we got to see a little bit more of it then. When the ball was in attacking, I thought Billings, if Melbourne are up and about, he's going to be very serviceable for them. As we just said, lead up. He can move. He did get himself up the ground. Gave an option when Melbourne needed it. So I think definitely at that 240 price, he's going to play a role for them. And, it depends on how long we kind of need him to play it in our teams. But I think he could definitely, 70s and 80s isn't out of the question playing that half forward lead up role. The thing is then watching him live, his defensive running patterns and the position he got, outside of the fact that he probably got lucky where he just happened to be standing in the wrong place, but Richmond switched the ball probably not to where it needed to be, and then he got a tackle and a holding the ball. And great, good on you, because it just kind of, I thought that fell into place. But we were standing there live and obviously watching with other people, and we thought he was out of position quite a few times when the ball wasn't in Melbourne's hands. Where Caleb Windsor, on the other hand, much better defensive pressure, and he got in that pack a few times and laid some tackles. Or if he wasn't there, he was trying to chase down players, and it was showed some real good endeavour. So I think if you're from the coach's point of view, you're going to the young fella and going, "That's fantastic. That's what we want to see from you. That's the role we want you to play." And Billings, again, they've got him in because they need to fix their forward line, him and McAdam. So I think the role he's going to play is going to be great. The only problem is, I think, in games where you think Melbourne's probably going to be into their eyeballs or potentially struggling in, let's just say they're playing a Collingwood or a Brisbane, he's probably going to struggle more than I think he could just absolutely feast on some of those bottom teams. So I actually walked away thinking, I want both of them in my team. And which is annoying because, again, it's 2 round 6 players. Now we get 2 more games of data where a proper practice match and then an actual AFL game on this for the Ds. But I think there was enough to see there from both players to go, yep, okay, they both deserve an opportunity, and I think they're going to get early opportunities for Melbourne anyway. Moving on to the guy who was best on ground. And his first quarter, there was a reason why Melbourne got up 31-0 early on. He kicked 2 goals. He was everywhere. I've wanted him in my team, and I've swapped him around with Bont so much this preseason. The problem is, again, how many of these Melbourne round 6 players with the bye can we start? But Christian Petrarca, Joe, thoughts?
Oh, mate, when you look at him, the only thing you can think is, gee, he's a freak. Like, he's an Italian stallion, and I'm sure his grandma loves him to bits, as do we all. I mean, you just look at him, you think, what a good boy, good family, good cooking, and then incredible football. Like, there's nothing this guy can't do. It was really when he was moved out of the centre bounces to play a bit more forward that all of a sudden Richmond started to get some ascendancy coming out of the middle. Obviously, Viney was a mainstay there and probably got the most amount of CBAs as normal, but Petrarca's his presence was unreal, and the way he would just pounce on a loose ball in the forward 50. He was lightning quick. He set up a goal, kicked 2 of himself, so he was incredible. And we were talking about it at the game, Swizz. Everyone's talking about these uber premium midfielders going like 125. This guy without Clayton Oliver, Clayton Oliver, just quickly, I don't think is going to feature very early on in the season. Might not even feature the first half of the season, to be honest. But for that first half, it's not unimaginable that a guy of Petrarca's ability and the form that he's in, that he doesn't go 125.
Well, he did it last year without him. He's like 17 games span with 125. So why can't he go 125, 130 if he's playing pure midfielder, which he did for pretty well the first half of today. And then he actually got trotted on the foot. And he actually told the trainer pretty well, leave him alone. And he just put himself forward. So he played. I was shocked. We were both thinking, okay, they're going to put him on ice. No reason to risk him. And no, they just put him up forward. And then when Richmond started to sort of drag ahead, he put himself back in the midfield for a little while and set up another goal. And he just was clearly the most dominant player, even with not needing to get involved as much in the second half. So just the little things he does is he's just a ball, and he just finds the ball so easily. So at that, like, kind of that discounted price, for a guy that averaged 119, it's amazing to say that. But he's true average without clarity in that side is around that 125 mark. So, and if Oliver's not playing, and to touch on Oliver, we watched the first quarter of the 5th period, I guess you would call it. And he's playing against VFL players. He probably did look like he was not in perfect shape, but the guy did have 5 touches in the first 8 minutes and kicked an absolute beautiful goal. So, he's just that classy. So he will feature at some point. I don't think it's going to be round 0, but you never know. But I don't think they're going to rush him back that early. Melbourne, I think they can probably win enough games until mid-year to then make sure he's ready to go for the second half of the year. And I think that's the plan there.
Yeah.
I'm talking about other players who also, took an early shower, and this guy ran some laps at half time. But how Max Gawn isn't in 100% of teams right now. Talk about dominant rucks. And even to the point, it's a practice. It's not even a practice. It's a match sim situation, which the guys took a bit seriously.
Yeah.
I think he gave away a free kick, and God, Gorney was cracking it. You could see how much the will to win is over his face right now. Like
Oh yeah.
they've been the team that should be winning the flag for a couple of seasons, haven't done it, choked in the finals, kicked themselves out of it, and he looks as determined as ever, even though he's got he's bandaged up and everything. So, Joe,
Yeah.
are you a lock with Gorney?
100%, no doubt in my mind. He's never left my side. And just to show you how much he was taking it seriously and how much he was playing full on, there were about 18 stoppages, and he rucked in 15 of those 18 in that first half. So he's well and truly up to in it to his eyeballs. He wants to win it really badly. And I think he was just meeting some KPIs in that game, got a hit out, and then we saw him run a couple of laps in pretty fast pace there. So then when he was done, he gave some high fives to the crowd. So he's in a good headspace. I think, he's definitely locked in at R1 for me. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's no doubt about that. We'll touch on a couple of last ones before both of us have to run. We've got to go look after these Tay fans, make sure they get in nice so in time for their concert. So we've got a couple of the young fellas. Bailey Laurie, mate, what did you see there?
Bailey Laurie is. I definitely try to look to see him because I've currently got him on my bench in the forward line, and I was hoping that he would play a bit more, I guess, around the ball. And I think he was given some opportunities, mostly playing a bit of half forward for the Demons. And to be honest, it looked like a decent player. It looked pretty clean. Did some nice things without necessarily starring. I think that the case for a lot of players, especially playing that role. Like we didn't think like a Billings start either, playing at a half forward role, for example. So it seems to be that this is going to be a very unheralded role playing for Melbourne. So one to continue keeping an eye on. I can't wait to see him in the next game. Hopefully we can see him get a bit more of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. And as we said, we'll get two more looks at these players, but hopefully, he can work into it. The other couple that I probably mentioned, this guy, it's hard, not for more Supercoach, maybe a little look for draft. I thought McVee played a really good game. It took us a while to get used to the fact that he was wearing the number 4 and it's not
Yeah.
Harms anymore. But yeah, he actually really dominated in his roles. He's coming across half back. So it always seemed to be him bringing it out. And I guess that's the thing with Salem not being there. It'd be interesting to see what happens when Salem comes back in. But I think he deserved a mention. Rivers did get a few, I'm sure he got a few CBAs in there. What did he actually, I definitely saw him pushing into the midfield, but maybe he actually didn't. But maybe he actually didn't get the CBAs, but I'm sure I saw him. I think the role might have been then he was coming off that half back or that back of the wing and then running into the centre because it must have been the repeat stoppages that I saw him in there because I did see the number 24 around the ball and I'm like,
I
okay,
think
there's
just coming
Rivers
off
around the
half
ball. I was kind of shocked that actually it was sitting at 0 CBAs because I thought he was serviceable enough. I know a few people have messaged me about asking about him, so I probably got somebody to continue to look at. But the real impressive rookie coming out of the Ds, and this is a young small forward in Brown. Did some very nice things. I think he's 102k forward for us in Supercoach. So, what did you see there, Joe?
Mate, he was very good, very, very good. I didn't remember. He's very classy as well. Son of a gun. They like to call him son of a gun.
Yeah,
There at the
they were
ground.
yelling that out over the loudspeaker.
That they were, and I can understand why. Kicked some beautiful goals as well in the pocket as well. So definitely like what I saw there. 102k. They really need it. They need someone like that to push up the ground.
Sorry, Joe. I was just going to butt in. Kynan Brown here is a mid forward 102k, which is even more interesting.
Even
but go
better.
on, mate. Go
Even
on.
better, and I could see because this guy wasn't just playing forward; he was roaming a little bit outside forward 50, and I thought a lot of the spark that he gave to the team was really important. And he set up a couple of really crucial goals, one to Van Rooyen, one to Petrarca as well. He did some great things, and it was that line, that adjusting of the angles. Like he would be very happy to step inside on two defenders rather than just continuing to go down the line, where very often Melbourne continue to get shut down. He changed up the angles, took on a tackler, stepped inside, and set up a goal that way. And I don't think they had enough of those types, and that's why we're sort of raving about the Windsors and the Browns. Like these are the players, this youth, this enthusiasm, this energy, to take the game on and in a different way than just the linear, standard, vanilla style that Melbourne always played. These guys took it inside, took on a tackler, changed angles, and it was really exciting. I'm really keen to see this guy. I might put him in instead of a Laurie at my F8.
Yeah, and it's a great point you make because after the Petrarca spark in the first quarter, Richmond started to work their way in it, and Richmond were just moving the ball as they all have always done under Dimmer. Still, new coach, same thing. Through that half back line, down the wing, and they were just cutting Melbourne to pieces. I think there was 11 out of 14 goals the Tigers kicked there between the second and third quarter, it might have been, until the D's worked their way back in it. And the way the D's worked in it, because they were sort of playing that bit of safe footy, was the switch kick, taking it on through the midfield and then moving it, through your hands of your Petrarcas and Vineys, and getting it in quick to give your JVRs the best opportunity to lead up and take a mark. And if they're not doing, if it's falling to the ground, and then your Browns and Cozzy Pickett's can come into the game, which Cozzy Pickett definitely did. Nearly took mark of the year, even though it doesn't count in preseason. It was almighty leap. So yeah, that's what was coming from sort of your Windsors with Salem not being there, and as I said, you've got the likes of Brown, a couple of those other young fellas trying to take that game on, and that's how Melbourne, because I feel like in some games they do kind of play that low scoring shut down. They've got such great defenders, but their forwards obviously being young and have had some issues with their forward structure. Maybe it's a case some games where it's like, we'll score 70, you score 60, and hopefully we get the win there. So I think they definitely need that little bit of spark. It can't be always just Cozzy Pickett, as great as he is. But they do need to change a couple of things. And we've seen this with teams before. A bit of youth, bit of energy. You only have to look at the Pies, and you bring a couple of those guys in, and it really gives the boys a lift. But if you look like, especially through the mid-year there, Melbourne went, this was from, I think it was about round 8 or 9, but they scored 76, 72, 61, 66, 63, 45, 79 points in games of footy. Like,
Riveting.
that's just not sustainable to win flags. So they do need to change the game plan, get those forwards involved, and the best way to get the forwards involved is to get them in the ball into them quickly. So it'll be interesting to see what Goodwin does coming out of this, because it has presented him with some extra options.
Yeah, because they have a great defense, but if the ball is just waltzing out from their forward line all the way to their back line in a heartbeat, then there's only so much that a great back line can do, especially because May isn't the most mobile type of forward, any type of defender anyway. He's a great reader of the football, but if there's no pressure because the ball is waltzing out the forward line, like we saw too often today, I think the ball just bounced out way too quick. And the halfbacks for Richmond just had an absolute field day, like Short as well, for example. So a lot. I think there's obviously clearly a lot to work with over there at Melbourne. They're a sensational list. But Goodwin's got a lot to work out. I don't really rate him too highly as a coach, personally speaking. I think his list certainly helps. The quality of the list definitely helped them win the flag, as opposed to his tactical nous. But we shall see.
Yes, I love it. Put that on the radar, and they'll probably win the flag, and people will come back and play that soundbite to you. But no, I do agree with you there, Joe. And it'll be interesting to sort of what we see from their next practice match, and then going into the round 0 game against the Swannies. But I think that's it from our report from Casey Fields. It was great to actually see some footy. 10 a.m. game at Cranbourne. Actually, I hope the government spends a little bit of money upgrading that, because I could definitely see like the D's taking the Suns or the Giants and a couple of those teams who probably don't grab the bigger crowds down there, because it was 6,000-7,000 packed in there, gave it a really great atmosphere, and it was great to see so many fans turn out and just pack out the joint. So it was pumping. Russell Robertson was doing an awesome job on the mic, getting the crowd going. So I thought the whole day from Melbourne and Richmond. And one last point, because we did see the guys were walking out. Jake Lever kicked an absolute fantastic goal. I don't know if he's kicked many for the D's, but yeah, credit to him. So it'll be interesting watching on for the rest of the week. These preseason games, we'll hopefully, myself will be trying to get down to a couple of them, and try not to tinker with our Supercoach teams too much after each game, Joe.
Yeah, 100%. It's really hard to, but always got to remind yourselves, guys, that these preseason games are always an opportunity to allow the lower names, the lesser names, to really show their stuff. Obviously, the established players, each of the teams already know what they're going to give. These are an opportunity if you want to try something new, or to give these younger players, for example, a chance. Then not necessarily going to translate into the season proper. So don't go overboard with making adjustments to your teams as a result of what you see in the practice games. I know I got sucked into that mistake last year, which caused me to have a slow start. Learn from those who have experienced it. Just look at the players and their roles. Don't go overboard with changing your teams.
Yeah, couldn't say it better myself. Joe, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you?
Everybody can find me at the Centre Bounce, myself and Big J. Also run a YouTube channel. If you guys haven't checked that out, greatly appreciate if you would, and chuck us a sub there. We are experiencing some great growth. We are pumping out content almost on a daily basis, not quite daily basis, but almost close to. We like to do the hard work so that you guys don't have to. You can reach us on YouTube. We're on Twitter at, you can find me directly at Chabby_Joe. Also the Centre Bounce at bounce_center. So looking forward to speaking with you guys all real soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Supercoach community, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.